guys, what's up? It's Joe Rady from Rady's Rides. I'm here at the Mecum Auto Auction in Kissimmee, Florida. And guess what? Walking around, this particular Mustang really caught my eye. This is a 2012, practically brand new Boss 302. Ours is the Laguna Seca edition. But before we dive into this track-ready Mustang, let's talk about what's going on here. So the Boss 302 first hit the streets not in 2012, it actually started all the way back in 1969. There's a very, very popular racing series that even still exists to this day, not as popular, but definitely in the late 60s was really growing momentum. It was called the SCCA Trans Am Series. SCCA stands for Sports Car Club of America. And basically what that organization did was they created this series called Trans Am. And it allowed the American manufacturers, there were some other European and Japanese manufacturers as well, but really the main class was to allow the Mustangs to battle against the Camaros, to battle against the Challengers, and guess what? Maybe a car you never even heard of, an AMC Javelin. What that really allowed is that inner rivalry between the American brands and really created some fantastic racing where people recognized the vehicles that were out there on the track. On top of that, you had big names, Parnelli Jones, Alex Gurney, so many, Mark Donahue, so many famous names that went through the series, and it really was the golden age. As it went from 69 to 70, really was the golden age of Trans Am racing. Now the great news is, if you grew up in the 1980s like I did, the Trans Am series came back, and it came back in a big way from the 80s into the 90s. But for this review, the reason why I bring that up is that this 2012 Boss 302 has that name connection to the 69 Boss 302. Now, when you bought a Boss 302 back in 1969, 302 cubic inch, it was a higher revving, smaller displacement engine. Well, guess what? 302, that 5-liter V8, pumping out 444 horsepower, 6-speed manual transmission. Our Laguna Seca edition is sort of like my Shelby GT350R. It's a rear seat delete, really takes the performance to another level, not only when it comes to just taking out the rear seat, but also suspension work and definitely modifications to the bodywork. So let's go ahead. I want to dive into this 2012 Boss 302 Laguna Seca edition and see, is it one of the ultimate track ready? Because you could do a track day in this and just really turn some nice laps. Track ready Mustang. Let's go ahead and find out. Right off the bat, I love this generation of the Mustang. It really was a nice connection to the past, and many people say that what you see here is really their favorite when it comes to the modern era of the Mustang. Now, when we start up front, you'll see that connection to the past. I love the headlight housing, the size. You can see inside that large circular reflector. Go ahead. Look at some older Mustangs from the late 60s. Has that same great look. Now on the Laguna Seca edition, first of all, Boss 302s had a totally different front fascia than your standard Mustang GT. The Laguna Seca edition takes it to another level. Look at the massive front splitter. So this is an additional piece that has been added at the factory to give us more downforce to stop air from going underneath the vehicle. As we kind of come across the center of the grille, you'll see, of course, that iconic Mustang badge with the good old red, white, and blue. Nothing more than Americana than some baseball, some Cracker Jacks, and a Mustang. Love the nice horizontal slots. What's great is if you're looking at the two circular areas and you're saying, well, Joe, aren't you going to zonk that? Those are like non-functional. And you know how I feel about vents not being functional. The good news is you could actually remove those to get that maximum airflow. On the Laguna Seca edition for 2012, you have the bright red trim around the grille area. And the reason why, if you're wondering, well, why didn't they call it the Boss 302 Watkins Glen or the Boss 302 Sebring? So much success at that very famous track in California, Laguna Seca. Awesome, awesome raceway with the famous corkscrew, which is a great part of the racetrack. Now this lower section is all functional. You can see how that sill extends out. We're gonna scoop gobs of air into that massive radiator, stop air from going underneath. Now when we get up onto the hood, super, super clean. You're gonna have a slight bulge which we all like a little bit of bulge. Nice and wide, goes all the way towards the windshield. And then you're gonna have your other body lines. Everything goes right towards the A-pillar. And I love the way they carried the red with the black. Absolutely stunning. Now, when we come around the bend, what are we working with on this Laguna Seca trimmed out edition? You're gonna see these specific wheels, split spoke with the red, the machined aluminum, looking absolutely perfect as it's sitting here at the Mecum auction. And you know what? You're gonna get massive Brembo calipers. So it's all about increasing that performance when it comes to the suspension, to the handling. 19-inch wheel. Love the way they went machined aluminum all the way around. You do get larger rotors. Of course, when you go Boss 302, you're gonna get larger rotors, the larger calipers, increased radiator capacity for cooling. And wait until I show you the intake plenum at the top end of the business on this engine, but you're gonna have to wait. We're still working here. Going down the side fender, the Boss 302 sits a little bit lower because it's got different springs. Love the side badging, really kind of blends in the Boss 302 from the past and kind of putting a different twist on it. Even the way they did the font, the lettering, the numbers, spot on the money. You're gonna get bright red on the mirror caps, bright red, of course, up top. And as we come towards the rear, just the way the stripe fits the body is exactly to a T. You have that lower side sill extension just a tad. And then coming to the rear, let's talk about the rear tire setup here. So once again, 19-inch wheel, 285 on the width. So rear wheel drive, of course, we're trying to get the power to the ground. Love all of the beautiful color with that polished aluminum. And then as we get towards the rear, you'll notice you get a massive trunklet spoiler, of course, bright red. You got your tri-bar taillights, flat black in the center. We have that simulated fuel cap, and I'm gonna have Lori kind of zoom in and show off Laguna Seca edition. That's the actual track map of Laguna Seca, and it even has, that's where you're gonna have the corkscrew, one of the most famous turns in all of racing. And I've actually been in a race car on that racetrack, and you're literally dropping about 3 stories. As you come up in crest and you go down into the corkscrew, you're dropping about 3 stories as you go through the rest of the track. It's really an amazing experience. Now, as we drop down here, we're not dropping down 3 stories, but you'll see nice finished off exhaust, oval / cut. You have the diffuser back here. Of course, we're gonna be running 373 gears, and I hope you know how to drive manual because these were only available with the 6-speed manual. But why don't we pop the hood and check out that 5-liter engine. All right, guys, we got the hood popped. Underneath that hood, probably one of the most beautiful modern day engines of recent memory because it seems that everything is just covered up with plastic. As you can see, that massive intake plenum with the Boss 302 badging on there. What are you looking at in this engine? You're looking at that famous 302 5-liter V8, 444 horsepower, 380 pound-feet of torque. Like I mentioned earlier, it's mated to a 6-speed manual transmission. The car weighs around 3,641 pounds. 0 to 60, if you know how to dance on your twinkle toes, 0 to 60 in about 4.2 seconds. Quarter mile is gonna blaze by at 12.7 seconds, 114 miles an hour. And top speed is drag limited because of the extra aero, 161 miles an hour. Now, when I look underneath this hood, you'll notice that from the factory, you get a cold air induction box system. That's gonna help bring in that cooler air because remember, cold air is more dense. Dense air as a race car driver, we like those, or even as a performance car person, you want cold, dense air that's gonna give you more horsepower because you're gonna get a bigger boom when the spark from the spark plugs fire. You can see that massive strut tower brace gonna stiffen up the front end of the business. And then, like I said, this intake plenum, you could hang it on your wall as a piece of artwork. They did a really great job with making this engine look just as sexy as the exterior. But why don't we go ahead, let's get to the interior and see what Ford was doing back in 2012 when it came to their track-ready Laguna Seca edition Boss 302. All right, guys, we're inside this 2012 Boss 302. Now, one thing to be aware of, they made the Boss 302 for 2012 and 2013, and no longer can you get a Boss 302 because, like I had mentioned at the beginning of this review, the Shelby GT350 and GT350R took the place of this vehicle. Now, I know you're probably saying, well, Joe, back in 2012, how much was this? The way that this is optioned, being a Laguna Seca trim option, you're looking at an MSRP around $49,000. Let's see what you got for the money to the door panels. As you can see on the previous generation, a much simpler door panel. The materials are a little bit harder to the touch. You do have some microfiber suede material in the center portion and a very, very small door pocket there. Maybe 3 Twinkies, but you know what? This thing is so pristine, you're not gonna wanna eat anything in here, I promise you that. Now, when you get to the dash, very far forward, I do like the Boss 302 badge that they have. And like I was saying, you could get a standard Boss 302, but this is the next level. And really what I love are those additional Ford performance gauges. You have your oil pressure, you got your coolant temp, and then you have that digital gauge in the center with the Ford performance name there, looking really good. AC vents integrated nicely. Guess what? 2012 doesn't seem like that long ago, but that is what you had for infotainment. So there was no infotainment. You just had your stereo, CD player, and then the controls for those and your AC. Where the real magic happens though, it's not up here, it's right here. That wonderful Tremec 6-speed manual transmission. I love the shift knob that you would get with the Boss 302 package. Nice and short, and the throws, look at this, just as short as that actual shifter itself. Lots of flat black, but you know what? Like I said, we got to compare apples to apples. This is not a 2021 model. This is a 2012. This is what we had. You open this guy up right here. 2 cup holders, good old-fashioned e-brake. And then when it comes to the seats, I'm actually going to turn the lighting around and help Lori actually showcase the seats here. You have the Recaros with the Boss 302 badging there, which is wonderful. And you obviously have the openings to where you could run race belts, all Alcantara microfiber suede material with the high bolstering, which is great. And then, of course, I want to see if I can do this here. I'm actually going to have Lori back up a little bit. Check out the back. Rear seat delete, like I promised. I wish they did this on my GT350R. You could actually see that bracing at the rear to stiffen up the rear of the vehicle. That's the kind of stuff I like to see. That's what it's all about when it comes to these types of cars. But if you're ready, why don't you come over to the business end? I want to show you behind the wheel of this Boss 302. All right, guys, business time behind the wheel of this Boss 302 Laguna Seca edition. I like on the lower sill, you have that nice aluminum plating. It says powered by Ford. Very, very nice touch. Of course, you got the 3 pedals because you could only get this with a manual transmission, that 6-speed manual. Steering wheel, Alcantara wrapped, thin spoke, very simplistic on the radio controls. And then the gauges are really just very retro style. So you're not getting, you know, that whole setup where it's full digital and all that. It's very, very retro, and I dig that with this car. And I think that's why I like my own Shelby so much, is just that retro feel. Being in the Recaros, you're gonna get that high bolstering that's gonna hold you in. But man, this thing would be a blast to take around Laguna Seca or any racetrack for that matter. But why don't we go ahead, if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's wrap this one up. All right, guys, it's been another great day here at the Mecum Auto Auction at Kissimmee here in Central Florida. Really amazing, the experience to be at this event. And if you are not even planning on bidding on anything, nice to just come and enjoy the cars, enjoy the atmosphere. And this Boss 302 Laguna Seca, not only is it a Boss 302, but being that Laguna Seca trim, these are the types of vehicles. And this is a Mustang that definitely is on the rarer side. And if you want that great drivability, whether it's on the track, on the street, this Laguna Seca just checks off so many boxes. But if you want to keep seeing amazing muscle cars that could also handle here on Rainey's Rides, leave a comment in the comment section. If you're new and you're on your way out, hit that subscribe button. I promise you it's worthwhile. Come back for more. If you are a subscriber, thank you for being part of the Rainey's Rides family. If you want to help us keep making great content just for you on the channel, click the link in the description. Get yourself some Rainey's Rides merch. Got to give it up to Queen of the Camera. Lori's working that camera like a champ. Show her some love in the comment section because she is busting her behind out here. Thank you, Lori, for all that you do. And just like always, guys, I'll see you on the next ride.